This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Ad Hoc Grant Search Committee for June 2nd, 2025 at about 12:05. And right now we have myself and Kate as members of the committee, and then our guest, Alice Badeker from the Park Commission. So we are expecting Bruce Bowman from the Grant Committee, and then Mark Cassis from Open Space, and then Scott Zabek is going to join us probably in 20 minutes or so. He's getting out of another meeting, so we will have a full group. So basically, Kate, I don't see anybody here for open time for the public. We do have minutes. Kate, there's two of us out of the three, so why don't we throw up the minutes from the last March meeting? Not that there was lengthy minutes, I don't think. We'll just get those approved. I think I made it shareable.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh nope, that's my migraine handout that I'm working on.
We might need that too.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the minutes from March 24th.
Oh, that was really short. Okay.
One-stop EOI and the MVP application for the heating or cooling shelter, and then we were going to talk about it at the next meeting. And I guess that there was a meeting on the 28th, so I'll draft those minutes at some point if we ended up meeting.
So what you've got up here is for today. You don't have the meeting.
No. I have two screens. Sorry. Here. Is that better?
Oh, you multitasking people. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So we reviewed the one-stop EOI and the MVP application, and then I will throw together meeting minutes. We must have finalized the
Yep, the MVP one was finalized. Yep.
That's right. We did a working group with folks from the state. So I will draft those minutes, 3/28.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and we decided not to apply for the one stop. So that was basically it. Yep. Okay, I'll make a motion that we just note these down as accepted. A lot of these, Alice, are work sessions. Once we get into the actual application, we spend a lot of time editing in group, sometimes on a Google Doc. Shared Google Doc. So anyway, so today we actually have two grant possibilities that are opening up. One of which is the park grant, which we'll talk about first, and then the other one is the land grant, which is one that hopefully Open Space wants to do something with as well. We'll find out how much they think they really want to do here. Let me get the right version here. Hold on a minute. This is the wrong one. Just a minute. See if I can find the right one here. Where'd it go? Okay, let's try that one. Hold on a minute. Oh, I love sharing grants. Where'd it go? Okay. Doesn't want me to share. Come on here now.
Well, the reimbursement rate for the park grant is 52 to 70%. So that's not
right. Well, that's crazy. Can't find what I had up here. Okay, that's not helping. Well, okay, no, I wanted just a second here. Where did this go? Why can't I share this now?
Did I unshare it, right? Yes, I did.
I don't think you have to unshare, but all right, let me start over here. I'm going to just pull it up and see if I can just drag it in here.
So it says the number of residents in your city or town may affect the grant reward. Please refer to the application and documents. So I'm going to look at that.
That's what I was trying to pull up from the, I had it open on the website, but it doesn't want me to share it for some reason. Let me just try one thing here. I think it doesn't want me to share directly from the website. I have to save the stupid document first. So Let me see that. All right, let's try one more time here. There we go. Okay, here it is finally. So this is Kate, you will remember this one. This is one we applied for in 23 maybe.
Yes.
I think it was. Spent a long time on this one. So, and Alice, I'm sure you're aware of some of this at least too. This was the grant that we had applied for with Parks Commission before Dylan took over, I believe. And this was started out being both a splash pad and a walking path along the side, basically from the library parking lot all the way to Route 10. So kind of following the pathway behind or alongside the courts. So where all that big row of trees are. I forget exactly which side of the trees the path was going on. I'm thinking closer to the courts because we wanted to have the courts more accessible as well. And then the splash pad itself was going to be farther down, closer to the parking lot in that kind of open area that we saw yesterday was quite wet. So long story short, we'd applied for it. We got the grant. This Melissa Cyan is the same person who was in charge when we applied for it. And she actually came out to visit, so she's seen the place and knows about it. We had talked about at the time with the walking part to extend it across to link up with the sidewalk across Route 10. But that becomes really complicated with Mass DOT and everybody else having to get involved. So basically, the walking path would be just that length of the park and back. It would not create, a real connection to the sidewalks on Route 10 because there's a gap where you come out onto Route 10. If you took a right and went toward the old library heritage books, there's a gap there. There's no sidewalk there, but then there's a sidewalk further up. But that is kind of a messy area there, I think, with wetlands and whatever else. So I think it's a challenge to do anything there. And so we thought about crossing the sidewalk or crossing the road and getting over closer to the Clark Chapman because that gave us a more continuous sidewalk. But then that becomes a whole thing with DOT. So we didn't really pursue that whole part. We were just kind of looking at more or less the closed-ended walking area just to have a flat walking area, accessible walking area along the park. That was pretty much the feedback I think we got after Melissa came out to see us. Because one of her questions is, well, where is this going to go? And then the splash pad ended up being downgraded to a spray deck for concerns of septic and water use. And it's going to be more like a misting station in a way, I think, the way that kind of ended up looking, if I recall. And that, from my knowledge, we actually have purchased that equipment, and we actually have the equipment at the highway garage. But, the money ran out, the time ran out, mostly the time ran out. By the time it took to get, actually, it was a lot of questions from not so much highway department, but Board of Health at the time about drainage and septic and where was the water going to go, et cetera. So it took a while to get it approved. And long story short, this grant ran out before we got much of anything done. So we did not take advantage of the full amount of the grant by any means. So we have a history here with this person who I don't know whether she'll like us or not like us because of our performance here. The one comment she made when she came out was that she thought we really needed a master plan for Conant Park. And that you guys have done now, I believe. So that's a start in our favor. So we can talk about that in a sec. But I just want to pull out just a couple things. So this is, it's, a fair amount of money that could be available, but Tuesday, July 8th is when the application is due. So that's not too far away, realistically, given that it's probably as complicated as it was the last time. And we are, I believe, we fit into this funny little category here. There's a population requirement, and they start talking about towns more than 35,000. Let me make this a little bit bigger if I can do that. Hold on. Can I make that bigger? Where'd it go? Well, I tried to make that bigger.
Oh, I see. So it looks like our max award would be $100,000 since we don't
Right.
have
Right. So we fit in
transportation or 100 cars.
this section right here. We fit in the small town grants. So there's not a lot of money available for small towns, but they do make some available. So they put aside this year anyway 400,000 for small town grants. So that's where we would fit. And we compete only. The good thing is we'd only compete with other small towns. So we're not competing with all the metropolises out of Boston, which is good. Doesn't mean that the application's any simpler necessarily, but that's just two key points there. We have to have an approved open space and recreation plan, which we do. That's been approved since 21-ish, 21, 22. It's due up for a revision probably. I think it's about a 5 or 6 year time period. So in a couple years, that'll have to be revised again to be eligible for some of these grants. But so far, we've got the eligibility basically here. And at least with this one, we're not thinking about buying any land or any of that kind of stuff because that comes with a whole other set of requirements for appraisals and deeds and all of those kinds of things. So this is a pretty lengthy document. Let me just scroll down. I think the application might be in here. Oh, and just to say what it's able to be used for here. We're not acquisition. No, we're not. So I guess any of this design and engineering and construction. Usually these have been 2-year grants in my experience, where the first year is more the design and the second year is the construction. So, and it is a reimbursement grant. And I think, as you said, Kate, there's a chart per town, and we're like 65% or something like that, I think is the maximum of whatever we put out as the price. They will only fund us no matter what, 65 or something percent. So they do say here that the contract would end either on June 30th, 2026, which is only, by the time you get awarded, this is probably more like August if you're lucky. And get started on it. So that year goes by quickly, which is what we ran into in our first problem a year. And then hopefully it could be open until June of 27. But they kind of deliver that pronouncement themselves. It's not something we can really choose. They look at how complicated it is and how quickly they think we ought to be able to get it done, basically. There are quarterly reports that get filed, and that would be something that Scott would end up doing as the town administrator, most likely. Let's see. Now, this is interesting. Here, what I was confused about is this one says July 10th, but I saw earlier, did I not? July 8th?
July 8th at 3 p.m.
Yeah, so I don't know what this was all about right here. That was one thing I was confused about. But anyway, we'll go for the earlier one. And just in general, Alice, I end up being the one that gets in on the official portal to submit these things into the state. And I try to get them in a few days before the deadline because there's always something that goes wrong. Either the grant site poops out or something. So let me just see if the application is down here. Let's see. Hold on a second. Deadlines, yada.
I remember the other challenge with the spray deck was also that the septic system at Conan Park is quite old, and there was concern about it literally flooding the existing, putting an additional strain on the septic system that wasn't really built for capacity and may end up needing to be replaced at some point anyways. And the other issue that Charlie mentioned to me was about the amount of clay in that area is also kind of prohibitive because it saturates very easily.
Yeah, not good drainage there, I don't think at all, right? And so I think that's why we went to the lower volume, Kate. That, like I say, got walked back from splash pad to spray deck, which is a bit more like a misting station. And it would still, it would only be on for obviously the summertime from whenever, mid-June to, early September at the most or something like that. And only for a few hours a day. It would be one of those that would have the push button thing like anyone where the kids would get there and push the button and run through, and then it stops when nobody's there, right? So it's not like it's running all day like the fountain or something like that. So people had a lot of, misconceived notions about what it would mean in the waste of water and all that kind of stuff. So
Oh,
this is
yeah.
basically, the form is in here that we have to fill out. I think this is all pretty much the same, but what I'll do is I'll get out of this just to show you though that this is one of the documents I sent you. So this is what goes out on their website about just advertising for the grant, and this is the actual form in here that we would have to fill out. However, let me pull up the one we actually did fill out because it looks like pretty much the same form. Oh, and of course, now let me find it. Hold on. Project budget, project. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. Can I share this? These things are just being challenging to me today here. I don't know why. Well, it was in that email I just sent you guys. Hold on a minute. Alrighty. This is not helping me here. Darn it. Come on. Two seconds here.
Yeah, I think I have it up, the one that you had attached.
Yeah, I don't know if you can share it with your phone though. I'm not sure about that.
No, probably not.
Which document are you referencing?
The actual
First
application. I just have to pull it in a different file here. I think it's just it's hiding behind something that I didn't realize it was sitting behind here. I'm almost with it here. Almost. Let's see. Let's try that again. Okay, so come on now. Let me go back and I'll try and share again. Yeah, where are you finding? Here we go. Here we are. Here we go. Finally. God, pain in the butt. Okay. All right. So a lot of this we could use again, but before I get too complicated, I guess, Alex, let me ask, what, from your knowledge in Parks Commission, what have you guys been thinking about? Is there a desire to finish this project? Is there something else?
Well, we had talked about, trying to get it going again because we do have the equipment, and we never, I guess, like you said, the time ran out on the other application. And so that, I had said, well, I'll start looking to see if there's ones that were available. They weren't posted about a month or so back when I started to look for the next year coming up. And now they are. So I think that, the commission is interested in trying to, reapply for it to get the actual splash pad put up. But what is the equipment that we have, is that usable as the, on the splash pad rather, or the, what are we calling it? The misting?
Spray deck. I think it's called the spray deck.
Yeah, spray deck. Is the equipment that we have going to be suitable for the spray deck too? That's another question.
Yeah, I think we basically purchased, I don't know, Ed was in charge of this with Mark Reed, I think. As far as I know, we purchased the spray deck equipment, the lower volume. We did not purchase the splash pad equipment that had all the fancy little frogs and all those nice things that spout water. So I think it's a much simpler thing. I'll have to look. I must have a picture of it somewhere in my files of what it was going to look like in the end. So what we bought was actually the lower volume spray deck, to my knowledge.
Right. So yeah, I think the commission was interested in reapplying for it, and that I said I'd look into it. I've never done this before, so I would definitely need like help with what is it that we're actually filling out, and what we're doing. I've done one for school years ago, but I'm sure it's very different than a
Yeah.
town thing. So
Well, and I think too what we have to figure out, and that's why I'd like Scott to join in, because given that we already have the equipment, my question is, can we just do something for, the installation part? I mean, it may not be a terribly big ask. It may be just monies that we need to get it installed. And do we want to, still consider that the walking path on the side too? Because that was part of the whole thing that, we kind of dropped once this one got complicated. We didn't even pick up, the planning side. We got the grant money for it, but the actualization, I guess, of the planning of the walking path didn't go anywhere because we were so focused on this portion of it.
right.
So I know from the seniors' point of view, they would love to see a path. But again, that's would have to be, more bid out in terms of the construction part of it. But this document I sent around does show. I mean, it's a pretty lengthy process. That's why I'm just thinking about going through all this craziness again. But we had to put in. So we had requested 100,000, 100,000, I guess, of parks.
Yes, and it looks like the splash pad. So I'm like looking up the cost for the design and pathway excavation, brush removal, and stone dust was about $50-ish thousand, and then the equipment for the spray jet was about $50,000, and installation for that was like $70,000. I mean, that was then too. So the total budget was $192,000, and I don't know how much of that we actually used, but I imagine that those budget estimates are a little bit under given all the inflation.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think in a lot of that, I think the budget definitely changed over time as well on that. So that's part of our challenge on that. And these are the kind of grants too where you've got to actually put in the full amount. Even though you're only asking for a certain amount, you have to, as the town, show that you've got the entire amount. Hi, Bruce, and hi, Scott. Great. We're just talking about the park grant briefly here. And just to catch you up, we had applied for the park grant a couple years ago. This was for both a quote unquote splash pad and a walking path at Conant Park. Splash pad got downgraded to a spray deck due to water volume and septic concerns. And we never did do any construction side on the walking path itself, which was going to go along the tree line back of the alongside all the courts. And so from the parking lot all the way to Route 10, that never got finalized in terms of our working with it because we were so focused on the splash pads / spray deck. We had bought the spray deck. It sits in the town garage. And so Alice is here from the Park Commission saying that they would like to at least try to finish that project if we can. So with this grant application, we're just talking about what would make sense for us to even do. We do qualify under the small town grant program. And the application itself was pretty convoluted. I sent around this morning just a bunch of the grant documents that we had to put in last time. So we had to also put in the full amount of the grant, even though we only get about 65% reimbursed from this particular program. So we had to come up with CPA money and then also go to town meeting to get that dealt with. And you can do the town meeting vote after the grant gets awarded. These kind of grants would be awarded probably in July, August. We would have to have a town meeting before the end of December in order to make us eligible for the matching that we would have to do from the town. This
We
particular,
spend the full money from the last time, like
no,
so
we did not. But it's lost. So
Okay, so this is
it's
like a
gone.
new vote starting
Yeah.
over.
So it'd be a new one. And
I'm
I
nervous
think,
about that passing.
right. And so the thing with, I would want to go back, Scott, I think is take a look at the actual language in the town meeting vote as to how that was classified. But I'm pretty sure we had billed in only a certain amount from, let me just stop sharing this for a second. See if I can pull up one more thing. I don't know if I can be lucky enough to get my grants thing sharing today or not. Probably not. God, I don't know what's going on with grant sharing today. Normally they're not that complicated. Well, okay, I can't find it right now. But oh no, here it is. Oh gosh, hold on. Get out of here. I think they've changed something in Google here since I've done this, because this is not doing a sharing behavior like it should here. I don't know why. I'm going to shut that one down. Close this. Okay, let's try this one now. See if I can share this crazy thing. Okay. Nope, wrong one. Okay. Of course, you don't want me to share what I don't want to share. I must be out of practice, guys. Sorry. Here we go. Finally. Okay. So this is pulling out of Bradley's financial reports. Let me back up just a minute here if I can. So there are two portions of this, and if I don't think Mark is here, Mark is now also in charge of the community preservation account. And so we'd have to kind of go back and double check some of these figures. And it's one of the things that Scott, you and I were trying to do with him, was to try and figure out some of these leftover monies and what could actually be used. Let me find where that one went. So we have two different pots of money here. One was, oh goodness. Here we go. Gift funds, not
I
right
think you just
here.
passed it because I saw something that was highlighted.
Yeah, there's two. So I'll go to the first one first. So this is the other special revenue fund. So this would have been some grant money. I believe this would have been the grant money. So it looks here, so say 46,000 maybe is what we actually had. And again, this is reimbursable. So we have to put out receipts and then get reimbursed for it. With this actual expended at 35, according to Bradley's reports, I'm not, without doing the math, if that gets us our 65% basically. But somewhere along here, this would be the grant line that we might have gotten reimbursed from the state from this grant. So the rest of the grant, basically the 100,000, the balance of it, we never even touched. So there's like 50,000 that we forfeited essentially from my comprehension of this. And then the other part, which I'll go back down to, was the CPA fund that was right about here somewhere. Right here. So this was the rest of the grant. So we had to obligate like 192,000, I think, altogether. 6,000 of that, Alice, for your information, 6,000 of it Park was going to do as local fundraising. So we were trying to show that we had some local input and some skin in the game. Parks had volunteered at one point to do some fundraising to the tune of $6,000. But in spite of that, we had to show all of this. So this is from the CPA funds from 24, and it doesn't look like we spent any of it, I think. But this is to be verified with Mark on this part. So this is where some of the money would have come from for the both the walking path and the I'll stop sharing that, and the splash deck or spray deck itself. I guess the question is there anything left out of CPA that we could still use?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, depending on the wording of the town meeting vote. The grant money, I think that first one I showed you, that 46, is dead and gone. I think there's no way to revive any of that. So in that sense, you know, I guess what I'm wondering is, do we have anything we can use out of the pot that was there for CPA, given that it's still the same project. It just never got done, 2 years later. Whether we could make that argument with them or not. Because if we were to continue also with the walking path and then the installation of the spray deck, we might be able to have enough to wing it together, and we wouldn't have to even do this application. Maybe. Question mark. So that's where I'm kind of at, and I don't really know until we sort through the figures a little bit and get maybe Mark's opinion on CPA money, as well as looking at that language on the town vote. But anybody have any comments, thoughts? I don't want to keep blabbering here.
It would be great if we didn't. I mean, I think we still have to match the grant, even if there is CPA funding. We kind of either have to apply for the 100 or whatever, up to 100 plus additional CPA funds, or nothing at all, correct? Like we couldn't apply and use old CPA funds. Like we would still have to appropriate funds this year if we apply for the grant.
If we apply, you're right. Yeah. See, so if somehow those CPA funds could still be usable for us,
Right.
we might luck out and not need to even bother to apply for this grant. But if we have to apply, then yes, there has to be some CPA matching. I forget the percentage on that, though. I'm thinking 25%, but I don't recall. And that again has to still go through a town meeting vote, which could be as late as December. So as long as it's done in the same calendar year, you can go through the grant application process, have the awards, win an award, but you can't really start going anywhere until you show that you've got town meeting approval. So and that's where we got cut. I think our last time where, we were 6 months down the line before we could even begin anything, and the time clock just kept running very fast for us, given all the obstacles we were finding. So
I think given the only thing I've seen on the town forum, a lot of hesitation or comments about water usage. And I feel like it would be helpful to understand and be able to speak to what the ongoing maintenance and water usage costs are for the splash pad, because I've seen some angry folks mentioning that hey, we never accounted for this. What about ongoing water costs? What about ongoing maintenance costs? So I feel like if we are going to approach CPA for additional funding, I think it would be important to try to make that information more public, because I think we're going to face the same resistance if that information isn't available.
Yep. And I think a couple things just to reiterate for you guys that came in late, just that, again, this sort of this spray deck is more like a misting cooling station in a way, a misting station, I guess I would call it, maybe, compared to some of the splash pads you see like up at Look Park. The reason that this came up as a priority was through the open space and recreation plan. It turned out to be one of the priorities that people wanted to see in town. It's one of the things that people went out of town to access, but it was a high in demand kind of feature that they wanted to see at the park. And we'd have to go back, and I have to go back and find it somewhere in our paperwork. We must have all the background in terms of the actual purchase of this set of equipment, because that would give you all of that issue in terms of volumes and the amount of water used. But again, this would be something that would be on 3 months of the year, let's say, at X numbers of hours per day, whenever anybody was going to walk through it, whether it's the kids or even adults wanting to go and just cool off, and they're walking around the park or jogging around the park and want to just go cool off for a few minutes on a really, really hot day. It's only there sort of as a push button thing, to my understanding, to make it activated, and then it stops. So it's not a constant flowing thing, which I agree with you, Kate. I think we'd have to make that extremely clear. But I'm pretty sure the specs of this one versus the one we had thought we might get would be pretty clear, so that we could differentiate. It's not that, but it's this kind of thing,
Exactly.
I think.
And this is what the ongoing operation costs would look like for Southampton residents.
Right. And so I think that's something that could be developed. It would be helpful for our own internal use for sure. Yeah. So, but Scott, thoughts? Anything? You're mute. There you go. Come in.
I wouldn't want to loop in Randall to the conversation. I mean, he probably shares the same concerns I have about the water disposal part of it
Uh-huh.
and the
He'd been
impact.
involved in the beginning as well as the water commissioner, the former water commissioner as well.
Right. So I don't, is there an architectural design or engineering
Yeah,
for the,
GZA did the actual layout. So we've got their plans for the for that. And then yeah, I'd have to go back and look for those kinds of things, but we have some of that. And then this again was taking those issues of septic and so forth um, into consideration. So I can go back and look in my history here and pull out those kind of documents, I guess. But mhm. But I think we at the time the parties that were around at the time felt that had that had minimized the water use, and the concerns about septic and so forth had been minimized by switching to this lower volume design. So that was the goal at the time anyway. But we can certainly pull those up and look at them again, and just
That year, they had really pushed for projects that increase the number of spray decks in the state, right? Because of climate change.
yeah, it was a
And
big push on climate change, and they were really pushing a water feature, quite honestly, from the state. So
is
that's
there any,
part of it.
is there any communities in the area that have this type that they use or?
The
yes.
type that we have ended up with.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Who did we talk to?
Uh,
It'd
I
be,
we
forget. There was people that we did talk to about what maybe it was
yeah.
GZ that talked to other towns. I remember there was another small town that we were looking at because we can't do recirculating water because of the water storage issue and like the needing to chlorinate the water. I'll have to look back in the minutes from, oh God, 2021, 2022 to see if
22 or 23, I think. Yeah.
yeah, it was a while ago.
But we could also contact Anya, who was the engineer from GZA, who did all the work for this, and she could probably give us that very quickly out of her files, very easily. The one at Look Park, for example, East Hampton, Nonotuck Park, those are much more complicated, real, 10 or 12 different fun features that the kids have to go run through and play with the frogs and whatever else there is for design. So we were still going to be simpler than that, much less complicated, but this is even more basic, I think. I'm getting the impression it's more like a standing set of I don't know, I'll say pipes for lack of a better word. Something that would just more spray mist rather than volumes of water coming out is what I think it is. But I didn't see the final thing when it arrived. It went right to the highway garage, so I don't know what it looks like, to tell you the truth.
I'm pretty familiar with most spray parks in Western Mass, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Wilbraham,
With your
Amherst.
kids, right? Yeah.
I'm just, yeah, I'd love to just take a visit to see how they actually do the water in another community with this type.
Uh-huh.
And maybe talk to that community to see what their costs are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so our challenge is the application date is due on July 8th, theoretically. So that's only about a month away. The good thing is we do have some documents. I sent it around to people today with the actual application that we had submitted last time, so we can beg, steal, or borrow from that if we need to, in terms of some of the narrative. We've got mapping already done. We've got the deed. We've got things like that we had to do. One of the things that Kate spent an inordinate amount of time on the first time around was trying to show how we can be eligible, trying to focus on the environmental justice communities, which we do not somehow manage to qualify for, given our lack of diversity in this community. But she managed to do some tie-ins with our neighboring communities and did some flyers, did some PR on that, and that was a huge amount of effort just to get that part done. So I would not want to have to repeat all that again. I mean, we don't have time, number one, but I think the challenge will be to try and take what we can and see if we can just make the plea that, look, we got the award the first time, we ran out of steam and didn't have time to finish it. Could you let us finish the project? And I don't know if that would be a an argument with them or not, to also then, because we didn't have any time to do the walking path from the parking lot up to Route 10. So that was where it was going to be, along the wood line, the tree line, alongside the courts, on the back side of the courts, if you know what I mean.
So I feel like one of the first things we should probably do, in addition to figuring out what the ongoing water cost would be, is I feel like we need to get an updated estimate for installation, because I guess that would tell us if we would have funding left over to be able to do the walking path. Because I imagine that the estimate that we received in 2021, 2022 has probably changed quite a bit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
would GZA be able to provide at least some sort of estimate?
I would think so. I mean, I think they were the ones that had done something, for us before. So I think they're still on call to us, I think, Scott. So I'm hoping we could still maybe try to use them to help us finalize this, if it's at all possible. Let's see if I can give up one more thing here. I swear this is just not handing. Just a second here. Where are you? Okay. In something I sent, we had the budget description. Kate, do you have your
Yes.
screen open on that at all? Your email?
Where did I see? I just saw it was one of the documents that you just
Ones I
circulated.
just sent around. This is not
Yeah.
sharing for me today. I don't know why.
Project budget. Yes, I can share.
You could share that. That would be good. We'll get out of this.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. That's what I was trying to find. So these were our estimates at the time. And if you want to just scroll on up, is that it? Or is that the top? Okay, it is. Yeah, so that we had just a bit of a narrative that went with the budget, and then this is how we had tried to break out the budget for them. And so anything related to the pathway, so the excavation, the brush removal, and then the stone dust, we wanted a permeable surface. We didn't want tarmac. We wanted a permeable surface. So all that right there, that was, whatever that is, 45,000 thereabouts right then and there. So all we would have accomplished really is probably that spray jet purchase. That's right around that 40,000 mark. I mean, at most, that's probably all we actually really did here. So none of the excavation for the spray deck or splash pad, none of the landscaping, reseeding, construction supervision, etc., had been done out. So I guess this could be done one of two ways. We can go back to GZA and find out, or we could put out a call to local contractors for some bids. I mean, we've got a couple people that, the people that put in our pickleball court recently and so forth. I mean, they would probably be some that could possibly bid on this. And then if they would be the same kind of, just basically an engineering company that would be able to put in the walking path as well. So we could take a look at how we have to do that. But that was what our plan was here. So out of that, we were only able to ask the grant people for 100,000. 6,000 of another 6,000 was to be fundraised by the parks, and then that left about 86,000 that we went to CPA for. So that was where that came from. So that's the real reality here. So I think we can certainly go back and figure out, first of all, we have to figure out how much money is left at CPA. Can we use any of it or not? And then come back again with some ideas of what the costing might be for installing it. Talk to Randall also in terms of any concerns and ideas that he may have still. And then that may be as much as we can do, and then come back again in next week at this time, I would say, to come back in a week's time to say, okay, here's what we know, here's where we can go or not go, to see about this. Because I think if we can get this cleared up first, then we can figure out whether we want to really apply and apply for what parts of that. Bruce, I think I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick question as to whether in the equation of how to utilize the water, was ultraviolet treatment of the water considered as a potential option instead of, and that way you're reusing the same water. I don't know capacities of how long the water needs to be exposed to the ultraviolet light. I don't know the cost, but it wouldn't be going into septic. You wouldn't have to worry about the drainage. You're reusing the same water, but it's treated and it's not chlorinated.
I
She's
think the issue with, oh, sorry, Bruce, go ahead. Sorry.
Orchards treats all their cider with ultraviolet light. They don't pasteurize it. So I just an idea. If you've already gone over it, you don't need to delve into all the details about why this was excluded. Is just a thought.
I don't recall, Kate, do you know?
The excavation requirements and the recirculating water it's regulated differently. Like any recirculated water requires regular testing and I don't think, I'll look at the actual regulations, which actually at the point were still being promulgated. So they hadn't really updated the regulations to include the spray decks as a separate category than pools, which was kind of an issue. But I think that the challenge was having underground water tanks would require a much higher cost for construction, like for the actual water storage and pumping, and also higher maintenance costs.
Yeah. But I think you're right, though, that we were having to fall into the category of like swimming pools because there were no separate regulations for spray decks or splash pads at the same time. That wasn't final legislation that was being revised, and I don't know what's happened in the last couple of years, so we might have to check that out too. But okay, so I think that's where we are. Alice, comments and questions. We just want to go through all the pitfalls here to see, what do we know and what don't we know, and there's nothing worse than working hard on something and then realizing that maybe we went too far too fast without looking at some basic comments and questions. So anything you've got to share or think about here?
Well, I was just wondering, would it be faster to go to this GZA to get that estimate updated rather than looking at different, would we be able to go out to different contractors later, or are you set in stone with the GZA estimate? If they when it comes time to actually do it, are we locked into their estimate?
It would have to go out for an RFP once we get a better idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
They could give us an estimate, and they could actually bid on it too, but they would not be assured of the job, right? I mean, that's what we're saying. I mean, we'd have to have a competitive bidding process.
Okay.
Remind me, Scott, under a certain dollar value, you can do three bids, sort of best practices kind of thing, right? But under 50?
Yeah, this would be over 50.
Yeah, or something. So yeah, this will be over 50,000. So we'd probably have to go out for bid on it.
So it might be faster at this point to get an updated budget, because I agree too, the cost has got to be different than what it was in whatever years we were saying, 22 or
23, actually. Yeah. So let me check too, because what I didn't include in here, we've got some final reports somewhere from a GZA that I didn't bother to add to those emails because that probably had some costing in it. I'll see if I can dig that out and see what that looked like, and then we can maybe take it from there. But I'm going to suggest, if we can find enough stuff, are people available Friday offhand? I'm only conscious because of the time frame of having to put a grant together. If we needed to come together for a half an hour on Friday just to reconnoiter and see what we know by Friday, if not next Monday for sure. What's anybody's
I could do
availability?
Friday. Friday's fine for me.
I might be having surgery on Friday for carpal tunnel, but I don't know what time. They're not going to tell me what time the surgery is until like the night before. So if you needed to meet, like, absolutely, you could proceed and I can catch up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Bruce, where are you at? Bruce, you were muted, Bruce. Sorry.
Friday would work.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's try for this noon time again, if that's okay, Alice. Does that work for you? Is that a okay time?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it does. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll schedule it and then we'll see how much information we can get. I'll catch up with Scott later today and we can talk about connecting with GZA and getting a couple of those pieces together and maybe a quick meeting with Randall at some point between now and Friday and just sort of see where we are on things. Okay. And then we'll have a
Would
better
we
idea.
be,
Yeah.
are we able to see about the CPA funds by that point, or is
Yeah.
that too early?
Can certainly talk to Mark about it. He was going to be on today because the open space folks had wanted to apply for the land grant, so he must have forgotten about it. But we'll catch up with him too. It's a very similar application process. So between now and then, I'll try to corral him, and we need to figure out that. But we'll need to go back and just look at the town vote and so forth as to how that was worded, especially from I think it was 22, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll figure that out. So we'll see how many of these little checkoff points we can get clarified before Friday, and then maybe we'll have a little bit clearer pathway forward as to what we should do. But I just want to make sure that the desire was still there from Parks Department to at least finish off something that had started that seemed to be a desire and a need back then, and I think could still be argued. It's just as we got to update a lot of information. But updating is a lot easier than having to reapply to this grant, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And just so you know, Alice, this was not a grant that does. I know at one point Parks was talking about renovating that whole playground at Conant and getting new equipment. This is not a grant program that does that. They don't tend to do equipment, so we'd have to find another grant program to do that. But
I would love to help with that.
yeah, definitely. So good. All right. Well, I think that's all that I wanted to cover. So thanks, guys, for joining in. Don't want to hold you any longer here, and we'll circle back around with Mark if he's available on Friday. I may ask him to join in on the land grant on Friday if he's available then. See what they want to do, if anything.
Work, Monday as an alternative. I could meet at 12 or 1 on Monday if needed as well.
Okay. If 12 o'clock's okay, that's kind of, I know it's people's lunchtime, but if we can try to do it midday in between people's meetings, that tends to be a quick time if that's okay. I'll schedule it for Friday at 12, but also I'll do a backup for Monday at 12 as well, just in case. Okay.
Okay. Monday, I would maybe have to come in a little bit later. I think I'm volunteering at field day till somewhere around there, but I could probably jump on at 12.
Yeah. Or 12:30 or something.
Yeah. 12:30 might be better. I think I'm signed up from 9 to 12 or 9 to 11:30 or something.
All right. We'll see if we can get it done Friday. If we can get all our ducks in a row here, we might be able to at least know some of these answers by Friday, hopefully, and then figure out where we're going. So
okay,
good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Could I have Bruce? You want to make a motion to adjourn?
Sure. Motion to adjourn.
All right. I'm sure Kate's going to say yes, but she's on the phone, so I'm going to say that we are adjourned at 12:58. Thanks, everybody.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.